Welcome to BAM Fight Club. I'm Colby. This is Fern. We are previewing UFC 275 Teixeira vs. Prochazka, taking place this Saturday, June 11th in the Singapore Indoor Stadium in Singapore. The early prelims are starting at 3:30 p.m., prelims at 5, main card at 7 Pacific. And this will be a pay-per-view card, and this is shaping up to be a great card. The top 3 fights here are going to be crazy. I cannot wait to see all 3 of them. But first up on the main card, we're going to start talking about Della Maddalena versus Emeev. Maddalena is coming in as a negative 150 favorite. Emeev coming in as a plus 125 underdog. Maddalena is coming off of his debut fight in the UFC where he got a first round knockout. Before that, he's on Dana White Contender Series where he ended up getting a unanimous decision win. And Emeev, he's coming off of a loss. He's had a couple losses now in the UFC. The rest wins. He's had about 6 fights in the UFC so far. And Emeev coming out of Russia. Maddalena coming out of Australia. Fern, what are your thoughts on this first matchup?
I think this is a great fight to start off the fight card. Absolutely. You have 2 guys that are up and coming. Maddalena has a great record coming into this fight. You know, coming off of a great win his last fight, a TKO. You just look down his record in the last 10 fights and that's all you see. So that's very exciting, especially I think for, an international crowd to get the fight card started with somebody who is bringing, that kind of record, that kind of energy. And he's super young. I'm looking at his stats right now. He's 25 years old. Definitely got a lot to show. I think this is a great matchup to kind of pit your typical striker versus grappler. And, I'm excited for these, new guys who are up and coming for sure.
Yeah, and what's interesting about Maddalena, his record, he's got 2 losses on there, but they're the first 2 fights on his record are losses. Since then, it's all wins. So his first 2 fights are in 2016. They were both losses. He lost by TKO. He lost by submission. Since then, it's nothing but wins. So 11 straight wins. So it's not a normal 11-2 record where, every once in a while, maybe he wins 1 of 5. It's like, no, this guy's on a run, 11 fight win streak run here. Has not lost since 2016 when he debuted. With Emeev, he's got a little bit more of a mixed record. He does have some losses strung throughout his career. But if you look at him, his record, he's a bit older, so he definitely has the experience advantage coming into this one. But his besides being in the UFC, before he's in the UFC, he had 6 championship fights. He lost 1 of those 6 championship fights in the M1. This was back in 2012 through 2016 when he was fighting for championships in that other organization before he came to the UFC. And since he's been in the UFC, like I said, he's got 2 losses. He's got 5 wins. So pretty good record. I don't really know how this one's gonna play out. Maddalena, his streak, that confidence, it's not his debut fight, which is always the most pressure, I feel like, for a new guy coming in. He's got a first round knockout in his debut match, which is pretty rare for up and comers, for guys that come in and debut that way. He's got the win on Dana White Contender Series before that. So, for those new guys who are coming in, they've probably got a question in their own mind, have some doubts. They did good in some of these lower organizations, but now if they're at the top levels, are they going to be able to compete? That's got to be a question for every guy. You don't know until you actually go in there and do it. Well, he's gone in there and he's done it. So I feel like the confidence game is definitely going to be in Maddalena's favor. Emeev is coming off of a loss, but he is a veteran. So, and it's not the first time that he's lost. So he's gone through this before. After he had his loss back in 2014, he went on a big win streak after that. So, he's definitely got mental toughness. And I wouldn't say, with a newer fighter, if a newer fighter with not as much experience, had this kind of loss, and especially if it was their first loss, there'd be a lot of questions around it. but still, it's going to affect every guy, no matter how experienced you are. You're coming off a loss. It's going to be mentally tough to get over that hump and have the confidence that you need to bring into a UFC match. So I don't really know about the style matchup as much as I think maybe the mental game is going to be the where I think the edge is going to come in. And if I had to pick, odds makers are favoring Maddalena, and I'd agree with that. Again, just based on the records, the career trajectories of where these guys are coming from, where they're going, I'd probably pick Maddalena to win. I'm not sure how he's going to get it. Like you said, it's striking versus grappling, so likely going to be in the stand-up if Maddalena wins, and going to the ground if Emeev wins. You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and for anyone not familiar with it, M1 Global was basically the Russian version of UFC, or the Russian version of Pride. They essentially at one point were just marketing Fedor and trying to co-promote him in different organizations. I think they might have co-promoted with Affliction, anyone who remembers that clothing brand or that failed fight organization. Looking at Ramazan, he's got some good wins. Luigi Fioravanti fought in the UFC and he beat him in a TKO corner stoppage. Michael Falcao, another Brazilian who I'm very familiar with. I think these guys who have fought international, especially in Russia, tend to fight grappling heavy style, and you can kind of see that sometimes in the result or the outcome. And I definitely would, same thing, agree with the odds makers that Jack Maddalena is the favorite. He's young, up and coming, has been super impressive, and hasn't taken damage that some of these other fighters have, or have those even minutes or miles on their body. And even if these guys aren't losing by knockout, your body is fighting for 15 minutes for years. Like, that is ridiculous. Meanwhile, he's out of there in 10 minutes, 2 minutes.
Yeah, a lot of wins in the first and second rounds for Maddalena. It's pretty impressive. And yeah, that's a good point too. Emeev, since he's been in the UFC, he's only won by decision. Yeah, all of his fights have gone to decision. He's either lost or won, and not been finished in the UFC, but every single one of them has gone the distance. And so that's, 3, 5, 7 matches in the UFC. I don't know, 7 times 15, what is that? 70, 105 minutes or something like that of brutal combat. And he's up there in age. And so, that matters the older you get in terms of the amount of punishment that you can take. So yeah, he's not getting out of it as fast. But another way to look at it, though, is Emeev has got a lot more ring experience. I mean, he has a lot more fight time experience, not just in the number of matches, but he has experience in these wars that are where he ends up winning through attrition and just grinding guys out. So yeah, this one will be interesting. I'm picking Maddalena, and who are you're picking Maddalena too?
Maddalena. I'd be surprised if he doesn't finish him, for sure. He's just younger guys, man. There's a big difference, especially when they have that mental advantage.
Second match on the main card: Rogerio Bontorin versus Manel Kape. How do you say that? Kape?
I don't know. I think
Kape. Maybe it's Kape. I think it's Kape. Kape coming in as a negative 230 favorite on this one. Bontorin coming in as a plus 190 underdog. Both these guys, same height, 5'5", very similar in reach. On the stat matchup, well, I guess first, Bontorin is ranked. So is Kape. Bontorin's ranked number 8 right now. Kape number 14. Bontorin's coming off of a loss, whereas Kape's coming off a win. So again, right out of the gate, you got to give the mental advantage to the guys coming off a win versus the guys coming off of a loss. For Kape, this is now his 5th fight in the UFC. So even though he's pretty young, he's 28. He's not a complete noob. He's coming in with some experience in the UFC, and with Bontorin, he also has had several fights in the UFC. This is going to be his 7th fight in the UFC, and even though I said he's coming off a loss, it's worth mentioning before that he had a no contest and then lost the previous 2 matches. So I don't know if you call it a 3-fight losing streak. You don't count the no contest. It was marked as a draw against Chanel. Lost against Kaikar France, lost against Ray Borg. So lost against really good competition for sure. But yeah, that's got to be tough mentally. I'm sure in his mind, like, he has to get this win because a guy, who's not in the, very top ranks, especially in a division of the 125-pound weight class, if you've got 4 losses and a no contest, I don't know when his contract is coming due, but that's got to worry him. So he's got to also have that pressure of, is he going to have a job in the UFC if he doesn't end up winning this match? That's a tough mental game. Do you got any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting fight. Rogerio Bontorin, his fight against Kaikara France was awesome. He was beating Kaikara France till they were pulled apart, separated, reset, and Kaikara landed a freaking awesome strike. And it's just interesting because he was ascending, and I feel like this is one of those instances where the guy who won took the guy who lost juice. Like, he was essentially had only 1 loss or 1 no contest in years. So from 2013 to 2016, before he had a no contest, then 2017 he had a loss, but really till 2020, and then back to back on the biggest stage of your career, and like I mentioned, that fight with Kaikara France, he was dominating, he was winning. You're like, and now you see Kaikara France getting, I believe he's going to be fighting for the interim title, or he's up there, and you wonder, like,
yeah,
was that supposed to be him? And he did a great fight. Like, he had a great game plan, but I think he's fighting a great matchup for his style in Kape, and somebody who likes to strike, likes to be flashy, likes to go for those, open himself up by throwing those haymakers, by throwing those kicks and stuff like that. And I think if he's able to do what he did with Kaikara France, which granted, Kaikara France was young in his career, I could see Rogerio smothering him, and submitting him. Absolutely. Kape, I don't think I've seen enough to think that, like, oh, he's gonna, he's at that level where he can beat a guy who was essentially beating Kaikara France. I would have to go with Bontorin on this one for sure.
Okay. So you are picking the underdog on this one. So another thing to keep in mind is, it's one thing to have confidence going into a fight, which is always great, and coming off a win, you're gonna have that confidence boost, which you need to be able to engage properly to win a fight. But this guy's coming off of 2 first-round KO wins, so it's one of those things. A lot of confidence can be good. Too much confidence can be bad. He could be overlooking his opponent, who's coming off of a 3-fight losing streak. Hopefully he's not gonna take it for granted, because Bontorin is high ranked. Like you said, he's gone up, his losses have been against really good guys, so hopefully Kape is not going to overlook him and take this fight for granted. I am gonna go with Kape though. Just looking at the most recent history, I wouldn't say you always look at the last fight and that's the most important thing, but definitely the last 2, 3, 4, 5 fights I think says the most about where the guy is in his game, what kind of style he's going to bring into this match. It's very hard from one fight to the next to change a lot, so you want to look a little bit over the trend of the past few years. I feel to see where a guy's going, and it's not always the case. I mean, the guys, they can turn around their careers. Look at who's fighting for the championship. Teixeira, he's had his ups and downs, and it seems like multiple careers at this point, and he's champion. So I'm not saying guys only go on one trajectory, but yeah, to me that plays a big role. It looks like probably Bontorin's going to have the advantage in grappling, and Kape, man, it's going to drive me crazy. Is going to have the advantage in the striking if the stats are anything to go by. The stats are pretty stark in terms of the striking stats and the grappling stats, favoring one guy versus the other. So again, another classic striking versus grappler. And in this one, normally I go with the grappler when it's a striking versus grappler matchup, all other things being equal. But I'm going to go with the odds makers on this one. Pick the favorite. I think Kape is going to win.
Yeah, and looking at Kape's record, he's fought a ton in Japan, in Ryzen fighting championships. That's a lot of experience that he has. That Ian McCall, who he's got a win over, has fought in the UFC. Takeya Mizugaki, who is a well-known, fighter from Pride days, and he's got a win over him. So he's definitely gone out there and been tested, and he beat them by, KO or TKO. And that's, that just kind of goes to show, his experience. Yeah. The last time that, Ian McCall fought in the UFC was 2015, but he was fighting Brad Pickett, Joseph Benavidez, Demetrius Johnson, fought him twice, and he beat that guy by TKO doctor stoppage. So I definitely see where that's going. I was excited. I became a fan during the Kai Kara France fight, so that's why I'm gonna go with him. I'm gonna hope that they rematch one time at the top. If not, Kape is going to be up there and make a name for himself.
Third on the main card. When I saw this matchup, I was so excited. I was freaking out. Joanna Jacek is coming back, and she's fighting against Zhang Weili. I'll go ahead and let you kick this one off, Fern. Give me your thoughts on this matchup.
This is going to be a crazy fight. Fight of the night. And I think that they're going to come out and show people what I think the last main event or main card women's fight should have been. That disappointing fight with Bros. I think these two are just gonna come out. They come at each other and go at each other. Their technique, their style, they're both stand up. They don't back down. I want to say that they're the kind of have a good game plan, but I think ultimately they're clawing their way to the top, and they've shown it repeatedly. They just have great style, great pace, great everything, great technique. I'm always excited to see these two fight. Joanna, I want to see her become champion again. I think she has that chip on her shoulder to be like, I'm gonna get it back, and unfortunately she hasn't come close. I want to say, she's been there, but I would like to see either one of them fight for the title. I don't, given the outcome of the last Rose fight, I don't want to see a Rose rematch for that title. I want to see somebody new, and Weili has just been brutal. Up until her losses. Just the loss of the KO head kick to Rose, that was really unfortunate, unlucky, but she came back in the rematch and took it to the decision, and that's great. That was a crazy fight. Let me see you do that with other people, and I'm so excited about this. This guaranteed fight of the night. The women have been just stepping it up. I'm more excited for the women fights than the other fights. Absolutely. I am gonna lose my mind, and this is gonna be crazy being in Singapore, being near where there's a lot of Asian population. It's gonna be crazy. I want to see some fireworks, some just music, some techno, take me back to Pride days. This is gonna be nuts.
Yeah, and both of these fighters, they're so tough, they're so durable. Like you said, Weili showed that in that second Rose fight, that the first time really was a fluke. That was not a fluke in that she should have beat Rose, but that second performance, I think, really showed what she's capable of. She either improved, or she the first time she fought Rose, she just wasn't at the top of her game. Well, she came right back, and yeah, like you said, had that great match. Even though she lost, it was still an amazing fight. With Joanna, the crazy thing is she's got how many? 6. She's won the championship 6 times. Since then, she's fought for the championship 4 times and lost the last 4 times that she's fought for the belt. So I feel like the deck is stacked against her in that regard. For whatever reason, she's just not been able to get that belt back. But yeah, I would love to see her win the belt more than anything, just because, I mean, she's a lot more entertaining than Weili. I mean, she's a great shit talker. I loved watching her on The Ultimate Fighter. You know, way back, I thought that was, you know, one of my favorite seasons, because she's just always playing the mental games right in her opponent's face, talking crap, not backing down. And yeah, and you know, whenever she steps into the ring, she's going to bring it. Win or lose, every fight that I've seen her in is a great fight. And yeah, Joanna is a great striker. As far as the style matchup, I feel like Weili might have the advantage in wrestling, but I'm not sure that Weili is going to use it. I feel like after watching that Rose fight, even though there was a bit of wrestling, it wasn't super wrestling heavily. I don't know if part of that is because Rose's movement, she was able to, you know, negate a lot of that wrestling. But Joanna, I feel like, is not quite as fast as Rose and can't, you know, cover quite as much ground as quickly. So I'm wondering, is this a match where Weili, you know, her game plan going in is going to be to try to utilize her wrestling to negate Joanna's striking? Or is she just going to want to stand up? Like, you know, does she have something to prove? Because I feel like Weili kind of has the attitude of, you know, I feel like we saw after the first Rose fight, she wanted to get right back in there and go again. She's got that kind of attitude that she's kind of got something to prove, even though she's already champion, great fighter. I mean, doesn't have anything to prove. She's won the championship twice, fought now for the championship 4 times, seemingly came out of nowhere. Her first UFC fight was in 2018. You know, fast forward a couple years and she fought and won for the belt. So yeah, she's already had a great career in the UFC, even though she hasn't had a ton of fights. So I feel like doesn't have a lot to prove, unless in her mind, you know, she's aiming for greatness and, you know, she wants that belt and to reign on top for a long time. So I'll be rooting for Joanna. I feel like maybe if I've got to, you know, make a logical pick, things are probably leaning towards Weili, just because another thing taken into account too, Joanna's activity. Last time she fought was March in 2020.
She fought Weili.
So over 2 years ago.
Yeah, so it just...
And she fought Weili. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and she lost against Weili. I mean, that too was a good fight. It was a split decision loss. So I don't feel like the result of the last one tells us a lot. You know, go forward 2 years, you know, Joanna's had the chance to adjust. Weili's had the chance to adjust, and it was such a close fight. I don't know how much. Yeah, I mean, if it was a complete blowout and Joanna just got stomped, I'd say that last fight meant a lot more. But you know, if a few sequences went slightly differently, then, you know, Joanna would have come out on top. So I think it's going to be a close one, but I do feel like it's leaning a little bit in favor of Weili. Probably the biggest factor to me is the activity. Joanna hasn't fought in over 2 years, and Weili just fought back in November. And yeah, so as far as my logical pick is going to be Weili, probably to win. If I had to guess how it's going to end, probably by decision, but I'll actually probably be rooting for Joanna.
Yeah, I'd love to see Joanna come back and shake things up. And, you know, it's just interesting with these decisions, like how close we were to having completely different outcome. You know, Weili beat Joanna by split decision. What if it went the other way? You know, same thing. Weili lost to Rose her last fight by split decision. What if it went the other way? You know, like, it's just, I am excited because either way, like, I think a case could be made for either one of those fights for it to have gone either way. And, you know, it's just good to see that they are, you know, facing each other and pitting the top women against each other. And, you know, hopefully that one of them will be fighting for the title next. I after that fight, I don't want to see Rose, you know, a Rose rematch. I don't know what she's got to do, because I don't know. Her corner was very not receptive to any advice, and they were, they're an amazing team. They, it was, we talk them up about, like, they have a great corner, and Justin Gaethje and Rose and Usman all trained together, and they fought together and been cornered together, and they just did not do well that fight card at all. So
yeah, and if you go back and just listen to the talks in between rounds in that Rose fight, that was the weirdest cornering advice that I don't know. I could, like, the last one that comes to mind before that was the one with, like, Eddie Bravo and Tony Ferguson, where Tony's getting completely destroyed, and Eddie's like do an Imanari roll, or something like that. And then, but Tony was so out of it at that point, he didn't. I don't know if you remember that fight. And Eddie's like, I shouldn't have been your quarterman. He was just, like, filled in the emergency. I think we talked about it in one of the previous podcasts. It was a whole weird thing, but every once in a while you get the insight into the corner, and sometimes corner advice, you think maybe it's not the greatest, but how much can you really do? Well, in this last one, I feel like the corner made a huge difference in Rose's fight, because they set such horrible expectations about the way the fight was going, where they were encouraging her to do nothing. Very weird. Anyway,
that one stat that was like the whole fight, the whole Rose fight had like 60 something strikes, and like the Gaethje Oliveira fight in its short length had just as many. So like 25 minutes versus like 3 minutes, same amount of strikes. And that just goes to show, same corner people, same everything, just a different approach to, how they were trying to go. One of them was trying to win the belt. The other one was trying to defend it. And
so what's your prediction on this one?
I think Weili, just because her level of activity and the quality of that activity she's had. Yeah, she got KO'd by the head kick, but that rematch with Rose just showed how, like, wow, you're just like, I thought Rose was going to knock her out again. And for her to come out and hold her own, and, I thought it was close enough that, like, I would have been like, either whoever wins is fine with me. But definitely, like, I think she proved everyone wrong. Like, that first one, there's no fluke kicks, no fluke whatever, but, that was definitely a combination of perfect circumstances for Rose's win over her.
Okay, next up, we have Valentina Shevchenko versus Taylor Santos. Another fight. Man, so excited. I mean, I love watching Shevchenko's fights. I'm going to be so sad when she leaves the sport, because every time, you see her get in there, just her approach, like, she's 100% focused. It's kind of like I've been watching the Michael Jordan documentary, Last Dance, on Netflix, where you can kind of get that insight into the mind of a champion like Michael Jordan, how competitive he is. When I watch Shevchenko, I get the feeling like she has that same kind of mental attitude of, 100% of the time, she's not going to let down for a second, not going to lose focus for a second. She's just... And so consistent. She's got how many championship wins does she have now? 7. So yeah, since she's won the championship, defended it 6 times since then, and not in one of those fights, it's like she's getting better every time too. Like, people aren't even getting close. I feel like the last time she fought someone where people were thinking someone had a chance to beat Shevchenko was Jessica Andrade. Because Andrade has the strength and the wrestling and everything. And, like, Shevchenko seemed like she went out of her way to, like, prove that her wrestling was better than Andrade's. Like,
beat her at her own game.
Even completely. Though that wasn't. Yeah. It was crazy. So I love watching her fight. Can't wait to see her fight again. And she's fighting Taylor Santos, who's coming off of a 4-fight win streak. Before that, she had 1 loss. And before that, every fight she's won. She's only lost 1 fight. So she lost her debut fight in the UFC. Since that, has been on a win streak. And her last fight, she won by submission too in the first round. Which, getting a KO in the first round, it's impressive. But I feel like a submission in the first round even more impressive, because with the KO, that's where you have the most. In the first round, that's where you have the most power and you're most likely to knock somebody out. I feel like to get a submission in the first round, like you've got to, the person who's defending against that submission, they're at full strength.
There's no sweat.
You haven't had the time to wear them down yet.
All these things that contribute to it for sure.
Yeah, so that was very impressive against Joanne Wood, and that was just in November. She's been pretty active. She's had 2 fights in 2021, 2 in 2020, and Shevchenko, same thing. She's been fairly active. 2 fights in 2021, 2 fights in 2020. As far as predictions go, I mean, I don't know many people who are picking Santos to win this one, but I feel like now, having watched Amanda Nunes lose, followed by watching Rose lose, like, I don't know. It could just be a crazy time. The women's division could be, getting turned on its head. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, I definitely can't see Shevchenko losing. It's not out of the realm of possibility by any means. Another interesting thing about the odds is Shevchenko does have, I think, better odds than she had against Andrade. But most of Shevchenko's fights, you're going to see her at a negative 800 or better in terms of favorite. She's a negative 625, which are crazy odds. But I don't know. I don't know if it says anything that it's not negative 1,000. So they're giving, Taylor more credit than some of the previous fights that Shevchenko's had, or some of the matchups. So picking Shevchenko to win. Shevchenko usually doesn't finish early. She's a pretty cautious fighter. Starts off not slow, but just very careful and deliberate. Doesn't try to rush things. Waits for opportunity. If I had to guess, I'm gonna guess third round Shevchenko. I don't know if she'll win by submission or KO, but I think Shevchenko will finish the fight by the third round. What are your predictions?
My prediction: Shevchenko is an amazing martial artist. Like I've been watching a lot of boxing lately, and the difference between boxing and MMA is it's great to see boxers figure each other out and like think and you see them just go back to their corner and like form a game plan. With Shevchenko, I feel she's the same. She is just like, they always say in boxing, they're downloading data throughout the fight and, making these subtle adjustments. And it's great that, nothing against other teams, other fight camps, but her being like the prize student of her fight team and still continuing to excel, to get better, to win in the way that she's doing shows that she is not like becoming complacent at all. She is continuing to improve. She's continuing to work on these weaknesses. Her fight against Andrade, it reminded me of GSP when he was beating wrestlers at wrestling, and you're like, what? Like, where did this come from? How did he learn this? And you're like, that's amazing to see somebody at that high level just continue to improve their skills, because there is definitely a point where they no longer are able to retain that or make that happen. Like, I think of Jorge Masvidal, who has talked about his losses and he needs to get better at wrestling, and you're like, I think that kind of ship has sailed with Shevchenko. Even though she's winning by certain ways, you can tell she's putting in the work in all the other areas, because I just see her so calm, so composed. She'll get hit, she doesn't lose her patience, her just tranquility is always there. And she's an amazing fighter to watch. Like, I hope people look back on her and like you mentioned, like when she's done fighting, it's gonna suck because it's just beautiful to watch. She's just so smooth, graceful. Like, you can see it in her celebrations. Like, who else can twirl and spin and do that? Like, people doing that and she's doing that after fighting for however many minutes and punching and kicking and being tired. Like, just great grace, beauty and grace. Like, it's just amazing. And I think she'll show it that way as well. Like, I want to say that, like, I'd love to see an upset, just to shake things up, but she's just so on her game that is, I don't think she has the distractions that, Rose or Amanda Nunes have. Like, she's just straight up a solid fighter. I don't know what is going on with those other ladies, but that was just such a big, like, I don't know. Rose winning how she wins, like that last fight was like, you're back at square one. Same thing with Amanda Nunes. Like, you're getting beat up at your boxing. Like, what did you do? Did you train? Did you prepare? And Valentina just you can just see it. She's just built for this, and I'm excited to watch it, and I hope it's a highlight finish. I'm excited that 2 of the 3 main fights are females, like women fighting. Like that's great. I think and they're gonna live up to it.
All right, so do you have a prediction about how the fight will end?
I would say probably round 3, and she's gonna like finish her, because like I mentioned, she's so composed and just doesn't rush it, just takes her time, and then just beats him up.
And for the main event, Glover Teixeira versus Jiri Prochazka. Teixeira coming in as a plus 170 underdog. Prochazka coming in as a negative 200 favorite. And first thing I want to say is, looking at these odds, how many times has Teixeira been the underdog in his past 5, 6, 7 fights his run up to the championship? Has he been favored in any of these matchups? And here he is defending his title. And especially given Glover's win against Jan, to still be the underdog like that, I feel like it's some level of disrespect or something. Because he put Jan away. I was not expecting. I mean, lots of people weren't. The odds weren't. Odds makers weren't expecting it either. But it wasn't just that he won. He didn't like eke out a win. It was like he ran through Jan, I feel like, in that last fight, which is crazy. Glover is 42 years old. He's a guy who's had a resurgence in his career, had a mixed record, at one point in 2014 through, 2018. It was kind of like a 50-50 fighter. And then since 2019, he's on a 6-fight win streak, and he's the champion now at the age of 42, which is, just crazy, but great to see. It's like, reminiscent of Randy Couture. Someone who's just got that discipline that you see in some of these great wrestlers and grapplers. It's going to be a great fight. I don't know how this is going to go down, because I feel like Prochazka is a wild card where I've still not figured this guy out. I've seen a bunch of his fights at this point. He's only had 2 fights in the UFC. But he's had a ton of fights before that in these other organizations. And it's always hard to do an apples to apples comparison. It wasn't a small organization, Ryzen FF, you mentioned earlier, good organization. And since he's been in the UFC, his first 2 fights in the UFC, both of them were 2nd round KOs. And that was it. The last one against Reyes, the crazy spinning elbow knockout that he did. And I feel like he did something crazy in the one before that too, where it's like, is this guy really training this, or just like came to him in the moment and he just took advantage of just saw an opening or something, or tried something and it worked. It KO'd the guy. I feel like I haven't figured out his style enough to be able to pinpoint like how is he going to do against someone like Glover, because I feel like the guy could do something weird at any time to end the fight. What are your thoughts on the matchup?
Yeah, like he's definitely very impressive with the things that he's done in the UFC. All highlight reel finishes against great people. Even in Ryzen, he finished CB Dalloway, who was a UFC fighter. Fabio Maldonado, who was a great boxer in UFC. Fabio Maldonado has amazing boxing. Like, if you ever go back and look at any of his UFC fights, like he's got hands. Like just Mola Wall, who was I believe he was like a 170-pound fighter. King Mo, he fought in Bellator. I think he might have fought in UFC once or twice, but that now that he's up in weight, like it's interesting to see how that's translated, and he's been able to hold that and translate over. I'm watching wins over Kazuyuki Fujita, who's a great grappler in Japan, Vadim Nenkov, a Russian fighter, Satoshi Ishii, who I believe at one point was like an Olympian or something like that. And beating them by strikes. So like the fact that he has fought in Japan, where I think a lot of people have questioned the integrity of the sport over there, regarding PEDs and stuff like that, and and come out on top and finish in flashy ways. Like he's been able to move up in weight and carry that agility, that flexibility, that style, and we haven't seen knockouts like this like at all. Like it's just amazing to see him with Glover. Glover I've been following him for years. He used to train with Chuck Liddell at the pit, like that's like way back when, and like I don't know how long it's been since Chuck fought, but Glover is like almost the same age, like so but he was right there with him, and Glover just has that resiliency. He's tough, he's strong, he's been in all kinds of fights, and to show it at his age that he can still walk through somebody, like he did to win the title is amazing. I think if Glover makes it past the first 2 minutes, he's gonna win. But if Jiri can do his strike and his technique and stuff, like I see him winning in some flashy way as well.
Okay, well, on this one, I'm gonna pick Teixeira to win, because I think it's like you said. Essentially, if Glover can avoid the knockout, maybe in the first few minutes, once he gets a hold of the guy, and it's not that Jiri doesn't have any ground game at all, but I feel like he's going to be most dangerous in the stand-up. And if Glover gets his hands on the guy, yeah, he doesn't let go.
Yeah.
He's just like got that vice grip, and that very crazy wrestling style. He's not going to let go. The number of submissions that this guy has, I don't know, it's got to be a record or something like that in the UFC. He's got so many submission wins, and not just in the UFC. So his debut in the UFC was in 2012. The first fight showing up on his record was from 2002. So Glover's been doing this for now 20 years, and he's the champion. What a great way to end your career. I mean, even if he loses this and he falls off from here, he ends up retiring. Yeah, what a great way to go out, because he did fight against John Jones in 2014 for the title and lost, obviously. Fast forward 7 years later, gets to fight for the title again, ends up winning, in the twilight of his career. It's awesome for Glover. But I think, both of these guys are veterans. Just because Jiri's only had 2 fights in the UFC, he's had a ton of fights. The first fight shown on his record is back in 2012. So this guy isn't new, just coming out of nowhere. He kind of seems like that if you're just a UFC fan, because he's had 2 fights in the UFC and now he's fighting for a title. It's like, kind of like Chandler, where people kind of feel like, oh, this guy came out of nowhere. No, he didn't come out of nowhere. This guy's been fighting and grinding, and beating people, in other parts of the world for a long time. But I think Glover's experience. I feel like a cautious fighter in a sense, in terms of he's going to be on the lookout, obviously, for these, the crazy techniques that Prochazka can throw out there. And I think once he gets his hands on Prochazka, he's going to take him to the ground, and he'll do what he's done to so many people. And I'll predict a submission on this one. Submission win for Glover.
Yeah, I would say it'd be hard to pick against him, because same thing. Like Jiri's going to come out, stand up with him. But Glover just is so good at closing the distance, and you're going to factor in he's trained with somebody like Chuck Liddell, who can hit hard, hit accurate, and he knows how to avoid that, and he showed it in his last fight. I don't think at any point, like maybe 1 or 2 punches, I thought he was in trouble, but like other than that, like he was in complete control against somebody who has really decent stand-up. And I'm excited for sure. Like I think this is going to be a great fight to kind of set up any more fights as well. Like who's going to fight next for the title after this? I'm excited to see either one of these guys win. I think either way it's going to be it's not a decision. Like it's not a decision at all.
Yeah, on the main card, for the last 3 fights, I see all 3 of these fights probably getting finished. I think the most likely of the top 3 that's going to go to decision is probably going to be the Weili Joanna fight, just because they're both so tough. That it could end up that way. But I think the top 2 fights, it's a very high % chance that both of those are going to end in finishes. So can't wait to see this one. Any final thoughts, Fern, before we go?
No, I'm excited about this weekend's fight card. Great to see another crowd get to enjoy these fights, and looking forward to everything else, man. Just more posts, more videos, more everything, and excited for it all.
hit the like, hit the subscribe, and we'll see you next
care.
time.